Hello, fantasy sports fans. We are here on MFSN, and it's time for our NBA basketball preview. It's fantasy basketball time, guys. It sneaks up on you. You know, you just got started with football, and suddenly basketball comes rushing in. So I'm here, as always, with Kasey, Vlad to the Bone Scheinvold, and Ross the Boss.
Hey, everybody, I'm Ross the Boss, and I want to talk NBA fantasy basketball with you, cowboy. God, I'm excited about NBA basketball. It's one of my favorite parts of the year is NBA, hockey, and NFL all coincide together to drive me crazy, so I get no sleep at all during those months of that chaos.
It really is true. We got three sports going on already. I don't know what's happening in NASCAR, but I don't want to know. I don't
It's
know
over
if
in November, so you're fine. It's over in November.
Okay,
It's down to like 20 guys. Don't worry.
All right. So, guys, here's the way we're going to do it. We're going to run through position by position. We've assigned to one of the three of us the top 10 at that position. One other of us will do the sleepers. The other will do the busts, and we're going to kind of rotate through that. Now, I just want to make sure that we're clear so that everybody who's following this can understand why we chose what we chose, not the players that we chose, but how we set up the system. This is based on Yahoo positions. And if they have multiple position eligibility, we chose the position we feel that they qualify at most. The one that kind of fits with who they are and how they actually play. So we tried to work that out together. If there are any mistakes about that, you can express your opinions, but at least know what we were trying to do here. Ross, you have been assigned point guards. Your top 10 list, it's a very deep position. I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, there's some people that you left out, and I can't even fault you for it because it's so deep.
Well, I did leave some out, but they are like James Harden I left out, not because I don't love James Harden.
No. You left him out because we moved him over to shooting guard where he
correct.
really.
So just so everybody knows, if you don't see your favorite player as a point guard, he's probably a shooting guard. So don't get mad at me. Just get mad at Kasey Scheinfeld. Don't get mad at me.
All right. I can take it.
Fall guy.
Here we go.
Okay.
So Ross, take us through.
Okay, so let's start point guard. So I go by age. I'll go by injury prone. I have a lot of factors I deal with when I give the ratings. It's just not stats. And also attitude too. You got to have the right attitude to be on Ross the Boss's team. So my number one guy, because his age and just because he's developing better and better every year, is Luka Doncic.
It's such a hard name for you.
I can't even say it. Luka. So Luka, for me, he's my number one guy at point guard. I mean, I just think he plays every game. He comes into camp out of shape and he leaves in shape. I love his attitude out there. So he's my number one guy is Luka. I don't know what you guys think, but we'll talk about it later. Number two is probably the best shooter ever in NBA basketball is Steph Curry. Again, Steph is getting older. He's in his 30s, so I don't want to hear, "Oh, you didn't pick Steph first," because he's older. It's like Logan's Run. When you're over 30, you're dead.
And speaking of that, listen, that's a reference that's so old that the young people out there.
It's so old. But they redid it. They redid Logan's Run.
Now this shows you I'm so old I didn't even know they redid it.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
It wasn't as good as the original, but let's keep going. Damian Lillard. He's this great rapper, one of the best point guards in the game. I love Damian. They can stay healthy this year. He wasn't that healthy last year. We'll see what happens. And then Trae Young, he showed us what he can do in the playoffs. I don't know if you guys remember, but during the playoffs, he led Atlanta like into the final round. In the East, he was unbelievable. I like Trae. His development is unbelievable. I think he'll have a great year this year. The next guy, I know you guys don't love, but he's Mr. Triple Double, is Russell Westbrook. Plays for the Los Angeles to play with LeBron and Davis and Carmelo Anthony, and it's like it's a stacked team. It's unbelievable. But I like Russell as my point. Donovan Mitchell, University of Louisville, plays for Utah Jazz. Showed us in the playoffs what he's made of. I love Donovan Mitchell. I love this kid. I want him on my fantasy team. I had him last year. He was money. I hope I get him again this year. De'Aaron Fox, University of Kentucky. He plays in Sacramento. Nobody knows who he is because he plays in such a bad market. But De'Aaron Fox, if he stays healthy, he's one of the best point guards out there. I love him. Keep him. Try to get him. This next guy, Jay Morant. I love. It's Jay or John, right? It's Jay.
Ja
Morant. Thanks, guys. John Morant. Hype. I think this is going to be his year. He got hurt last year. I think this year could be a really good year for him. I believe in him. I like him a lot. We'll see what happens. Van Fleet for Toronto. This kid's a monster. They gave him a lot of money last year. He proved that he was worth it. He's 3-pointers, assists. He does everything up there in Toronto. He's a guy that if I had him as my point guard, I'd be very happy. He's great. And the last guy I'm going to say is Kyrie Irving. I love him when he's playing. I have a feeling this year he's not going to be playing because of personal reasons, because of injury. He'll probably miss about 20 games because what's going on with him and the vax not getting vaccinated. He's very against it, which is his own deal. I get it. I just know he has personal reasons. Last year he left the team to go to some wedding in Minnesota, and he was hurt last year. He's not a guy I would want on my team, but when he's healthy and he's playing, he's one of the best point guards out there. So I had to put him on my list. I apologize to you guys, but that's my top 10 list. I want to hear your busts and sleepers and what you guys think.
Okay, so I'm about to dive into sleepers. I do want to say I think Kyrie Irving, to me, and I don't want to step on your toes, Kasey, because you have busts. To me, he's a guy that you avoid early and you trade for later because you're gonna pay too much for him. Yeah. And then the owner who has him is going to get frustrated.
Or just stay away. Just don't even pretend he doesn't exist.
Stay away at the beginning because he's going to climb off to the side of the earth, the flat side.
I guarantee Kasey has a whole rant on him, so I'm waiting for the rant.
All right, so
I don't rant.
You have some good calmly. Stuff. You don't even know it happens when Kasey rants. So listen, I'm going to get into sleepers, but I'm going to say this also. This is such a deep position that I don't even disagree with Ross's list all that much. And Chris Paul wasn't even mentioned.
No, I love Chris Paul. The only reason I didn't take him is he was like number 11 or 12 on my list. I wish I could.
No, I know he could be a back end guy, but listen, he puts up probably top 30 number. I'm not criticizing you about this, Ross. I'm just saying, point guard is so deep that Chris Paul and Drew Holiday are two guys to look for.
Both of them
get cheap.
Both of them are great picks. Those are two great sleeper picks. Which you can
now
say
here are my some are deeper sleepers than others, but Lonzo Ball I think is going to have a great year in Chicago. Speaking of Sacramento and that market that just erases everybody, Tyrese Halliburton. This is a guy I want on my team. I think you can get him for very cheap, and he's a second year. He did so great in his first year. I think he's really on the rise. I think you get the Sacramento discount down here, and you should take it. Terry Rozier, this is another sleeper guy. He's from Shaker Heights, Ohio, by the way. Shout out to you, Terry Rozier. That has to be mentioned. Every year, Terry Rozier is kind of a back-end guy that you get as your third point guard. But he ends up being so good you could trade away somebody else. To me, why go for somebody like Kyrie Irving when you can get these kind of guys? Tyrese Halliburton I'd rather have, honestly. Malcolm Brogdon, another deep guy. He puts up great value. And last but not least, one of my Cavs. I'm wearing a championship 2016 shirt. You can say I'm living in the past, and you know what? You're right, I am. Of course I am. I'm going to live there forever. Darius Garland, very good point guard pickup for the back end of your bench. You're going to have to see how your rosters are constructed to see if you can fit all these guys. But these are some good guys to have. Kasey, I'm going to turn it over to you to busts, and then we'll move to shooting guard.
Okay, yeah, this is one of the deepest positions, if not the deepest position, I think, in fantasy basketball this year. And Ross's top 10 list is solid. There's only one I disagree with, and I would make a straight swap where he has him ranked, and that's Russell Westbrook. I know he talked about us already being willing to throw him under the bus. And Ross said his move to LA is going to be good for him. I don't know if it's going to be good. It reminds me of the Lakers. What was it, 2001, when they decided to bring in Gary Payton and Karl Malone and I think Steve Nash might have been on that team also. They started just bringing in all of these players to try to build a super team, and they didn't mix well together. When you put Davis, Westbrook, James, Anthony, all on the same team, that's a lot of people who need the ball in their hands a lot to fully live up to what they want to do. He has terrible shooting percentages. He always has. His free throw shooting isn't good. His three-point shooting isn't good. He might get assists. I worry that the triple doubles, if he gets them as frequently as he normally does, are going to be down this year. And just those percentages and the turnovers can really hurt you. So he's one I would list as a bust. And the guy I would put right in his spot is the other Ball brother. I think LaMelo Ball might be the one that both of you overlooked the most, because to me, talk about a young guy coming into his own. This guy was rookie of the month for 3 straight months, it seemed like, last season, and he's only getting better. So I would have put him right there. Ja Morant, I love the guy. He's super exciting, but he wasn't even in the top 100 in per game value last year. He had regressions in shooting percentage, in turnovers, and he already doesn't have great other numbers. So I'm not sure. He's a volume guy. They still have, who is it, D'Anthony Melton and Dylan Brooks on that team in the backcourt. So it's a loaded backcourt. I don't know how much he's gonna contribute with all of the other numbers. He could be great. We know how talented he is, but he scares me a lot. And the other guy is Kyrie Irving. I don't have a rant about him. The guy is super talented. Going back to his days at Duke and his days in Cleveland, he was in Boston for a while. Now he's in New Jersey. He's been all over the place. In every place he's played, when he's played, he's put up great numbers. The problem is the guy, he missed like 3 weeks last year because of personal reasons and wouldn't really share what it was, or he was mentally tired. Now it's the whole vaccine issue. I just don't trust the guy to be on the court. And, availability, especially with the price you're paying for a top 10 point guard, availability is a big, big factor. And I just don't think he'll be available enough.
I think it's a great point. Kyrie.
That's
Irving,
a rant too. Just so you
that
know.
was a rant.
That was a rant.
I don't
want to say. Oh, I know your rants, and you're doing like a minute rant on Kyrie Irving. Please.
I didn't mention you once, Ross.
That's
but listen,
fine.
It
doesn't matter.
It really is true. If anybody is going to disappear onto the face of the east side of the earth, is Kyrie Irving.
And I also don't think he'll be a Brooklyn Net for much longer either.
Yeah, but who would take him? That's my question. What are your thoughts on my LaMelo Ball look? Because I think that guy is.
I wanted to comment on that. Because
I had him last year.
I just had him as
last year. He is off the charts. I mean, I have him as a sleeper in shooting guard because he's
shooting guard. Okay.
I think he's more of a shooting guard instead of a point guard. But you brought him up, and he got hurt last year. He still won Rookie of the Year. He is off the charts. He rebounds, he assists, he shoots, he scores. He is one of my favorite players last year that was on my fantasy team, and everybody wanted him, I remember, during the year.
And let me just say this. When I was constructing my list, I was looking at your guys' list and trying to size it up because I want the viewers to be able to really see who are like the top 50 players more than at each position. It doesn't matter so much. You want to get great players. LaMelo Ball is in that top 50 to me. I looked at him as a shooting guard, not so much because I think of him more as a shooting guard than point guard, but point guard is so loaded. I had to start shifting some people over.
That's what I did with Donovan Mitchell.
I feel the same way about Donovan Mitchell.
Pushed him over to shooting guard because I think of Mike Conley as the point guard.
You're right.
I'd move him over to shooting guard, but really for the purposes of the people who are watching this and trying to learn which players to get, I think you want Donovan Mitchell. I think he's a great player. Do you want LaMelo Ball? Yes. You want all these guys. I'd rather have 4 great shooting guards and no point guards than 2 great point guards and 1 middling shooting guard. You want volume in terms of great players. Okay, guys.
Go ahead.
No. Last point. Go ahead.
I was going to bring up 2 rookie point guards who I think are going to be big, and we haven't talked about them yet. And mostly not because I think they're going to come into the world and take over like Trae Young did or take over like Steph Curry did as a point guard, but their defensive metrics, those other numbers. And I'm talking about Cade Cunningham in Detroit. I think he's going to be awesome. And Jalen Suggs in Orlando. I think he's going to take the playing time away from Cole Anthony and whoever else they have, because these are guys who stole the ball like crazy in college, and that tends to translate really well. And they're workhorses on the boards also. And those are some guys you can probably get really late in the drafts because people don't think about rookies as frequently unless there's a huge name. And this past draft didn't have any huge names who can contribute really well later for your team, and certainly as the season progresses.
It's a great point. You want to be thinking about who do you want at the top of the draft, but you've also got to be thinking who are you going to get late, because a lot of these guys are going to be gone.
They're both really good picks. I had them both on my list. You guys, those 2 guys are my 2 favorite rookies this year.
Good job, Kasey. You're on the money. Now, you're also on the spot because it's
my top 10 shooting guards.
Your top 10.
Okay.
All right. You hit it.
Shooting guards. Again, this is a fluid position. So some of these players I'm going to list, you might have them at small forward. You might have them at point guard. I put them at shooting guard because I feel they primarily fit the mold of a shooting guard here.
Kasey, so let me just jump in and say, when I chose my small forwards, I cross-referenced with you. So I tried to give you the respect of, okay, you chose that as shooting guard and I see that. And so you're not going to find a lot of overlap. So I just prepare.
I appreciate that. But some other people who are watching might see the overlap. And so number 1 is James Harden. I mean, the guy's a bit of an enigma from a personality perspective, but from a per game numbers perspective, the guy's insane. He shoots and scores maybe better than anybody else in the NBA. He can get you some of the peripheral numbers. He doesn't play great defense, but in terms of shooting and percentages, getting to the foul line, he gets to the foul line a ton and shoots a great percentage, which helps you tremendously to make up for maybe some other positions where players don't shoot as high of a shooting percentage. If you have a free throw player who gets to the line 10 to 15 times a game and can shoot you 90%, that makes up for the shooting percentage from free throws for other positions. So I think that's really important to note. Bradley Beal from Washington. I put him at number 2 because he was insane last year. His per game numbers were really impressive. I never thought of him as one of the elites until last year, and he was on a bad team, and he just kind of took over for the Wizards and did really well. I think Devin Booker took that step last year as his team made it to the finals to show he can be a leader, a lead scorer, and playmaker on a team. Him and Chris Paul were a perfect tandem, I think, in that backcourt, and he continues to put up elite numbers. I like Anthony Edwards a lot. I know he played much better the last 2 months of the season than he did the first 3 or 4, and his numbers at the end of the season were pretty good. He might be one of those lottery ticket ones who could be a boom or bust because he hasn't done it consistently for years yet, but I think the ceiling is so high on that guy, and what he did across the board was really impressive. So I have him at number 4. Jaylen Brown in Boston was awesome. There's no other way to say it. He all 5 categories he contributed to in some way, in a way that put him with the elite point shooting guards, and I don't see any reason why that's going to stop. Zach LaVine, I have him at number 6. I love him in Chicago. I think that's going to be a pretty impressive team. He's going to have Lonzo Ball next to him now, and as we talked about it, we think Lonzo is going to be big. I think he can make it even better for Zach LaVine there. CJ McCollum was one I wasn't sure where to put him. Point guard, shooting guard. He qualifies at both. I decided to put him at shooting guard. I'm sorry, Ross. I think that I stole some of your thunder with that one. He's a really good player. He plays next to Dame in Portland, and he can shoot lights out, which really helps your team. Gordon Hayward in Charlotte. Suddenly he came back from injury and was a little bit more like the Gordon Hayward last year that we saw in Utah several years before. If he stays healthy, that's always the big if with Gordon Hayward. I think if he can stay healthy this year, he's in the top 10 there. I like Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins is the other vaccination story, but I hear he got vaccinated, which means he's going to play. Not exceptional, but consistent and predictable. And I like that in the bottom 10 of shooting guards. And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker in New Orleans. Not a lot of people followed him, watched him, saw his numbers. When I was going through who were going to be my top 10 shooting guards, he wasn't even one of my probably top 15 thoughts. And then once I looked at the numbers and looked at what he did last year, it was really impressive. Lonzo Ball leaving might give him even more volume. He plays alongside Zion Williamson, who attracts a lot of the defense. And Brandon Ingram also. So I think that's a good number 10 for you in terms of the shooting guards. What do you guys think about sleepers and busts?
All right, now, Ross, I'm going to turn it over to you in a second, but I do want to make this point because we really got to stay on this. If you look at this list, you can tell Kasey had to craft this list around how heavy point guard already was. You know, the back end of your list, Kasey, you were kind of like, all right, wait a minute. There's a lot of guys I could kind of reach for here. I would say, and I think you'll probably agree, I'd rather have Chris Paul than Andrew Wiggins. It's not even close.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So you just need to know that. In this draft, I would say, at least the way that we're setting it up here, you want to prioritize those point guards more. There's probably 15 point guards that beat out the back end of this shooting guard list for me. So I'm just going to say that now. I'll turn it over to you, Ross. You tell us what sleepers you have. And we should note with LaMelo Ball, I think we were kind of cross-referencing.
Yeah.
You didn't have him in point guard. You expect him to be at shooting guard. Kasey didn't list him as shooting guard. We all know LaMelo Ball is great, but go ahead, Ross. You tell us about him.
So LaMelo Ball, I had doubts when he was drafted. I didn't know if he was going to be like that great because I know his older brother was good, but supposedly his older brother was the best of the bunch, which isn't true. So his younger brother LaMelo, again, all 3 categories, unbelievable. Even 4 categories and steals too. I mean, he's just going to get better and better. I believe he's turning 20 this year. So as I told you last year, he got hurt and he didn't get to complete the last month of the season. This season, I think with how Charlotte's going to be improving a lot this year, I see him having a really good year. So if you can get him cheap or even medium or even like moderately priced, it's totally worth drafting Ball where he's at. Another player I like who I think is going to be a sleeper in shooting guard is Aaron Gordon in Denver. I feel he's going to really, you'll see him and Porter really improve a lot this year in Denver. They have a really good nucleus with Joker there too. So you'll see Aaron Gordon have a great time there. Another guy that I love, he's going to take Kawhi Leonard's spot for a long time because Kawhi's not going to be playing for a while. And you saw him in the playoffs and you saw how he had over 30 points in one game, is Terrence Mann. This guy's the real deal. I mean, I saw him play throughout the playoffs. I mean, I was there at the game. He's really good. And he probably won't even be drafted in some leagues. But if
I
you
want
can
to
get
point
him
out that it's not the Terrence Mann from Field of Dreams.
Yes.
A
I was
much
wondering
different
which
Terrence
one of
Mann.
us. I was wondering which one of us, Kasey, would pounce
That's
on
funny.
that.
So again, I love this kid. He is full of energy, and he'll be getting like 35 minutes a game because Kawhi Leonard will not be seeing the court for a while because he's hurt. So those are my sleepers. You'll take them or leave them, but I feel very strong about all three of them. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so I'm going to get into busts, and I'm going to kind of vary the kind of busts that I'm talking about. Because listen, you can have lots of different kinds of busts. You can have the kind of busts that you're going to have to pay for extensively. We talked about Kyrie Irving, that kind of bust. And then there's also busts that are just like they're hyped for some reason, and you don't think they're going to live up to the hype. And then there are busts that are just guys that I feel are overvalued, that I don't really understand their value. So I'm going to talk about those three things. To me, I agree with Kasey about the upside of Anthony Edwards, but he is Goose and Dr. Green from
and
ER.
Doc, yep,
and I don't trust them. I'm kidding.
Is it the same guy?
You forgot
It
originally Revenge of the Nerds.
And of course, Gilbert. I would not forget that. But thank you.
One of my favorite movies. Yep.
So listen, Anthony Edwards. The reason I have him as a bust is not because I think he is going to bust. It's because at the point where you can value him, he is boom or bust. He could easily boom. I admit that. But I just don't like where you can get him for that reason. Now, Gordon Hayward is another guy that I actually see as a bust. I understand why you put him on your list, Kasey, especially in that back end where it starts to get nebulous. He's got the upside to be there. There's no question. I just don't trust that he's going to stay healthy.
There you go.
And
I agree.
That's the risk.
I agree. I do love him when he's healthy, though.
Absolutely. I mean, he's so much fun to root for too.
I love that guy. Keep going.
I hope he stays healthy.
I'm
not saying I hope that, but I think his health is the issue.
Yeah, I'm going to stay away.
Karis LeVert is another guy whose health is an issue. He's very talented, but I think he got a little overrated at a certain point. There was a point where he was completely underrated. Then he crossed over into a little overrated, and now I think he's got some injury risk on top of being in a new setup. The Pacers spread the ball around a lot. I just don't love him in that system. Andrew Wiggins is another bust for me, and here's why. I just think he's all scoring. He doesn't. When I look at a guy who might potentially bust, if his scoring goes down, he doesn't have the steals, the blocks, the other things that make you a valuable fantasy basketball commodity. I don't want to have him on the back end. And D'Angelo Russell is another guy who I don't understand his value at this point. People are remembering him from when he was drafted. He's starting to get passed around the league for a reason, And
he's in Minnesota too, right? So
yeah,
no one watches those games.
Can I ask you guys a question as kind of the least experienced fantasy basketball player of the three of us? Sorry, I'm speaking myself.
Three of you.
Person.
Yes. You should include yourself in this.
Okay, fair enough. Draft position versus draft budget. Do you understand if it's an auction draft versus a snake draft? Do you look at sleepers and busts differently between the two? Because I know some people might be watching this who are saying, well, you're saying they're a bust, but if I can get them for cheap, it's not a bust.
Absolutely. I think let's also not forget it's also about roster construction, especially when you're doing an auction draft. You get to decide how you're going to structure this roster. So yeah, if you can get Gordon Hayward for $4, that's a huge steal. I mean, that's absurd. So it really is all about the value. In a snake draft, it's more about, well, who I'm picking here, if there's opportunity costs to whoever you pick, you're not getting to pick, all these other players. So you really want to add it up with a snake draft based on, well, who's in the pool of players right here. and who can I get later, and where can I get more value. With fantasy basketball, to me, positions don't matter very much at all. You need them sometimes for flexibility to fit them in the lineup, but mostly you want to get the best players that you can. And I think in auction draft, you want that value to be based on what price you're willing to pay and how your roster is constructed. For snake drafts, it's about where you get the guys. Ross, what do you have to say about it?
Oh, I agree. I mean, it's all about getting value. I mean, if you can get LaMelo Ball in an auction draft for $4 or $5, you made out. I mean, some of these busts, we're not saying not to take half these guys, but just don't overprice yourself with them. I mean, as you know, we all want to get our 2 or 3 big high price guys like the Hardens, the Jokers, people like that. But the hard part is waiting for those guys that aren't going to be overpriced, they'll be undervalued, and you just hope no one else bids for them. So it's tough. It's a very tough situation, but I'd rather stay away from some players than have them on my team for obvious reasons.
Well, and one of the reasons that we do an auction draft in our basketball league, and I love it, it's very refreshing from snake drafts, is you get to make more choices. You get more control over
if you really want a player, if you want to pay $100 and $200 budget, if you want to get Luka for $100, go ahead and do it.
Yep.
And then,
and often that kind of thing is worth it. Actually, it doesn't.
Sometimes it is.
Last year I did that with Luka. It wasn't as worth it because he started off the season. He
started slow, but I mean, this other guy in our league, I didn't want to mention his name because if you say his name 3 times, he appears. He actually got Joker, and he played a lot for him. I thought, oh wow, this guy's overpaying for this guy, but obviously he was the number 1 fantasy guy last year, and this guy had a great season, and
he also had Steph Curry, I think, too.
Yeah. I mean, this guy,
and listen, sometimes it's going to be about you hit on the right particular ones to have that year, but just try to pay the right price,
Yeah. And this other guy in our league bid on Harden. I really wanted Harden, but I just didn't want to pay that much, but it was a great idea. This guy bid for him. He got him, and Harden was money the whole year. And this guy's a genius, and he's a doctor, and he has a beard, and he lives in Cleveland. I don't know what his name is, but he's also a Beatles fan.
Those are a lot of clues.
That was a lot of clues. That was like giving clues to like a 3-year-old to make sure that they really guess it right. That was me, guys. And meanwhile, Harden was a complete pain to own last year. He was out
did get
a lot.
Hurt. You're right. You're right.
Hurt. And actually, one of the reasons I drafted him is that he hadn't gotten hurt.
He was like triple doubles. I mean, he was playing great when he was healthy.
I can't fault myself for drafting James Harden.
I'm not faulting you at all. I thought you could have traded him. You should have traded him again. We'll talk about this later in the year, but you could have traded him very high, and you laid on him, and you should have got rid of him.
I could have traded him for a lot of.
I would have got rid of him. His value was so high at one time.
So let's move to small forwards. This is often my favorite position to pick, and some of it's just because LeBron James is there. I can't help it. But again, I tried to structure this in a way that kept out of the way of shooting guard and power forward. And so you guys might disagree with how I categorized what I did small forward and power forward, and that actually made it a bit easier because I could divvy them up as I saw that they belong. So just sit tight with me. If there's somebody missing,
no worries. We won't say anything till after you're done.
Okay, so my top small forward is Kevin Durant. He, obviously he does carry some injury risk, but he is just a gargantuan fantasy basketball player. As long as he stays healthy, he is pretty much guaranteed to be top 5 because he's just so good. And included in it is that his free throws and his shooting percentages, he does everything.
6'11", and he's a small forward.
He is. He qualifies as small forward, and I think he kind of plays more like that.
I'm not disagreeing. I just think it's funny that he's a small forward. Keep going.
It is, but you know what? When we get to power forward, you'll see why he's not there because there's guys like Anthony Davis that they play more like a power forward. But my second small forward is much more like your more typical small forward, maybe even a shooting guard. Is Jason Tatum. This guy is a beast. And he does everything. And he's also, I like to pick young guys who are already established. Like Luka Doncic, I'm more likely to take him this year than I was last year. He had more of a coming out party. He had more arrived. When it comes to, especially in an auction league, I'm willing to pay, but I want to have seen it. With Jason Tatum, I got him 2 years ago for $4. It was ridiculous. And then he was great. Then I got him the next year for $25. That was still great.
Yeah.
This year, I'm probably going to have to pay 70 to get Jason Tatum, and I'm probably going to let that go. I think that's a little too pricey for where he is, but he is my second in small forward. I got Paul George next. He easily could have gone to power forward, but as I divvied them up, he made more sense here to me. You saw what he did in the playoffs last year. I was really impressed by, and I like to see a good mental game if I'm going to draft somebody high. And Paul George is showing that he's got more of that than I thought. Jimmy Butler, I have at number 4. He is, I would say Jimmy Butler he can be a bit of a lackluster kind of pick in some ways for some people because he's not going to be top 5. I'd be surprised if he was. But is Jimmy Butler going to be in the top 25? It's a guarantee. Absolute guarantee. I also trust the Heat a lot to bring out the best in these guys. I think they're going to do a good job with that. LeBron James is number 5. This guy is very hard to place. He would be higher up if he had better free throw percentage. But the guy already he's going to turn the ball over a lot, and he's got low free throw percentage. So he's dinging you up in a couple categories already. That being said, as you know, I'm a Cavs fan. I'd rather root for LeBron than anybody. I've had him the last 3 years running, I think, because I can't stay away from him.
Didn't you trade him last year?
I did trade him, and whether that was a good idea, I think it worked out well.
I like the trade you made.
I mean, I got Karl Anthony Towns. Yeah. So if you could deal those guys straight up, it's a no-brainer. It was after Karl Anthony Towns was coming back from injury, so there was some risk. As it turned out, LeBron got injured. He never gets injured. That is a huge advantage of LeBron. So I have him number 5. I think he's placed right. Number 6 is Chris Middleton. You guys saw what he did in the playoffs. He is a severely underrated player. Chris Middleton does everything, and I really trust the guy to take your team far. And I think you can probably get Chris Middleton if you were in an auction draft. You could probably get him somewhere in the 40s. And that's a big bargain. Whereas for LeBron James, you're going to have to pay probably 65. So I'd rather have Chris Middleton for $25 less. And in a snake draft, it'll be interesting where they go. I don't have as good a sense of that because we prepare for auction draft. DeMar DeRozan, I have as my number 7. I think he's still a very underrated player. The Spurs do tend to suck fantasy value out of players, but I still like him in that spot as a back end small forward who can still put up big numbers. Tobias Harris, I think, is very underrated in fantasy sports. It's interesting because he has one of the worst contracts I've ever seen in real life. I think that they overpaid for him, but he really is a great player. And he's excellent in fantasy basketball across the board. My 2 back-end guys at small forward were Brandon Ingram and Buddy Hield. Now, I know a lot of people, Buddy Hield people are mixed on. This guy, though, is a rock-solid pick that's going to finish in the top 80 players. That's pretty good to get at the back end of small forward. He never doesn't do that. He shoots the ball well, and I think you get the Sacramento effect again. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Kasey for sleepers, then we'll go to busts with Ross.
All right, I like that list. I think it gets a little negotiable, obviously, the back end of the category. And so I'm going to give you 3 names that I think could end up in the top 10. Well, 2 names that I think could end up in the top 10, and one that I just think is a really exciting young rookie who can really help. The first one I'm going to talk about is Jonathan Isaac in Orlando. I love this guy. If you, the last time we saw, when he was on the court in 2019 and 20, because he was hurt last year, I believe, his averages were 15 points, 8.5 boards, almost 3 blocks a game, almost 2 steals a game, along with 2 assists and a 3-pointer. Like, out of the small forward, to be able to get 9 boards, 3 blocks, and 2 steals is crazy. If this guy can stay healthy, he shoots decent percentages, 78 from the line, 47 from the field. Like, that's, if he can do that for a season, that's a top 5 or 10 player in the position. So he's the first one. The second one is from Toronto, OG Anunoby. He was really good last year. I think he's getting a little bit more hype this year, so his value might be up, but not as high as I think it should be, especially with Pascal Siakam being hurt to start the season. You're going to get a lot of numbers from Anunoby early on. He can put up top 40 numbers. He gets rebounds. He gets a couple assists. He's willing to steal the ball. He kind of stuffs the stat sheet. And I think he could end up in the top 10 to 15 small forwards by the end of the year. And the rookie I'm talking about, let me look at my notes here, is Scotty Barnes, also from Toronto. He was the number 4 overall pick out of Florida State. the guy's a high energy player who plays unselfishly. I think he just made some news because his preseason game last night or the night before really stuffed the stat sheet. He's not a prolific scorer, but he's a smart playmaker. He's a defender, so he gets steals and blocks, and he's not afraid to get his nose dirty rebounding. And so I think he's somebody you can get late in the draft. If you look at his ADP, if we're looking at it as a snake draft, it's 250th. And this is a guy who, if he can contribute in those on the peripheral numbers and the defensive metrics, can really help your team if you have that on your bench. Maybe not as the starter, but that's somebody to grab late.
That's a great point also in terms of how you construct your lineup. And Ross, sit tight on the bus. We'll get to you in a second. But I think it's really important, especially in fantasy basketball, that your back end guys are guys that get steals and blocks and things like that. That's where you're really going to make your money on the back end, because you can get a 3-point specialist. You're going to need guys who can win you certain categories. Because remember, there are people who play rotisserie that are just categories building up, and you're going to need help in those categories too. But in head-to-head especially, you find a guy who can get you lots of steals and lots of blocks. It can be incredibly valuable. So you really want to balance your team that way. Ross, before we do get to you, I also want to say to people out there, if you want to make comments, please do. We want to have a discussion with you. We want to know what your thoughts are. And if you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing. We want to hear from you guys. This should be an interaction. We're trying to give you the best advice we can to get you ready for the fantasy basketball season. But a lot of times you guys bring out the best in us. So hit us up with comments. And Ross, now take it away with busts for small forward. And then I'm going to make one more comment on small forward before we move on to power forward.
Okay, thank you. So you're not going to agree with what I'm going to say. And I'm going to say some names here that you're going to say, these guys are all-stars, Hall of Famers. Why are you putting him in this bus? And I'll tell you why. First one is LeBron James. LeBron James has a super team around him. He's not going to play every game. He's going to get hurt. He's older. He'll be 37 this year. I believe that he has all these people around him like Westbrook and Davis and the rest of the whole clan, just so they can get into the playoffs. As soon as the playoffs start, it's going to be magically, he'll appear, he'll be in perfect shape, and there'll be nothing wrong with LeBron James. I feel he's going to shelter himself during the regular season. He's not going to play every day. He'll take games off, multiple games, and I would just stay away from him. I don't want a 37-year-old on my team. You'll be paying a high price for him. If you're in a snake draft, he'll be a top 10 pick. Stay away, Will Robinson. Stay away. Lost in Space reference I give you guys. The next one is Kawhi Leonard. I live in LA. I'm here in Los Angeles. I like Kawhi. He's a local product. He went to school out in like 40 miles out of LA. But I like him. I think he's a great guy. He does a lot for community. Has nothing to do with that. He is hurt. He's not telling anybody if he's getting better or how soon he's going to be back. I feel people are going to anticipate him be back sooner. I don't think he will. Just like Klay Thompson's not going to be back until Christmas. These guys, you just want to stay away from. I mean, if you can get them like in the last round, do it and stash them and put them in IR, great. But if some of these idiots are going to take them early, let the idiots take these guys early, because I'm staying away from anybody that's going to be hurt to begin the season, unless it's like a 1 week or 2 week injury, but it's not. Kawhi has a major injury, and it's major. And another guy that Kasey you took, and I like him, but I just think Sacramento is going to do a big rotation. They have a lot of talent there. Buddy Hield, I love this guy. I believe he went to Oklahoma State, I think. And he is a shooter, but I just feel he's not going to get the playing time he did last year. He's going to get a lot less playing time. They got that rookie Mitchell from Baylor. They have a lot of talent on that team this year in Sacramento. They'll be floating around rotations like crazy. So, those are my picks. I know you guys don't agree, but I'm just telling you my 2 cents. And if you want to draft Kawhi, if you want to draft James in our upcoming draft coming up next week, go ahead.
Okay, listen, Ross, I think your analysis was great. I don't even disagree with a lot of it, but I do want to say this. Kawhi Leonard is one guy on these lists that I think slipped through the cracks. It's somehow he didn't get categorized as a shooting guard or a small forward.
Well, he shouldn't. I mean, he's a small forward, okay?
He is a small forward, and so listen, I'm the one who created the small forward list. What I would do, seeing that I now see that, I hear you, but Kawhi Leonard, he can be a major contributor. And so, look, if you're going to take a chance on a guy like Anthony Edwards, I understand that. You could take a chance on a guy like Kawhi Leonard. I think Kawhi does belong in the top 10.
Okay.
Where do you fit him? I also agree with your analysis of LeBron. I think you're going to see him sitting out games and protecting himself. I didn't know exactly where to put him. I might put Chris Middleton up a bit higher.
No, I mean, you have to put him in the ratings. You have to put LeBron. I mean,
he's still going to put up great
He's
numbers.
A beast. I mean, but please, I don't want to hear like, oh, you don't think LeBron's a beast. He's when he's healthy, when he's playing, I want him on my team. Trust me, he's unbelievable. But again, he's 37 years old, and he's not going to be playing every day.
Okay, another guy, though, that was mentioned is Pascal Siakam. I think that guy is really...
He's hurt.
I know he's hurt, but if you can add him for cheap...
For IR, yeah. I mean, just remember, he's out for at least 2 months. And Kasey, I had him in... I like OG a lot, and I feel OG's numbers are going to go way up this year, and I think that's a great pick by Kasey.
I agree, and especially in those first 2 months before Siakam's back, he could be even better.
It's genius.
Opportunity in the NBA is
I agree, and I had OG in my big forward column, but now I take him out.
All right, so now I'm going to move on to power forward. I've got the top 10 here. I just realized Siakam doesn't qualify at small forward, so he'd be in the power forward category anyway. I don't rank him in the top 10, and I don't have the sleepers list. But Ross, you have the sleepers list. I'll put Siakam out there, and you can knock him down, or Kasey, you can deal with him in bust. My top 10, number 1 is the unibrow, Anthony Davis. I don't care that he didn't finish in the top 5. I think he finished 16th overall in Yahoo in terms of his average numbers. Anthony Davis could be the number 1 pick in the draft. I'm not saying that I would make him definitely number 1, but he's certainly in the discussion. I feel actually more comfortable with him than I do with Durant as a pick in terms of, I think he's actually less injury risk, which is funny to say because he's been dinged up so much of his career, but he only gets dinged up a little bit. You know, he doesn't tend to have the major injury. It's the major injury that I worry about. But honestly, I don't think you draft that way. You draft based on, are they usually healthy? Then go for it. Number 2, and I would have him number 1 if it were not for his free throw shooting, is the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I can even say his last name. Listen, this guy is so much fun to root for. I loved watching him win a championship. It's his free throws that sets him back, though, from being the number 1 at power forward. Even so, I'd love to have him on my team. Number 3, I'm going to give a shout out to Ross the Boss. Okay, last year I said Zion Williamson, stay away from him. No way. This guy is becoming a beast. Now, it is, and look, I always thought he would be very good in the NBA. I didn't think he was going to be a bad NBA player. I just thought for fantasy purposes, he wasn't putting up the blocks and some of those peripheral numbers that you need, and he started to do it. So I have him in number 3. Now, he's a little bit more of the Anthony Edwards type, but I think he's more proven, and he's even a higher talent. So I think he's safer there. Number 4 is Jeremy Grant. This guy is very underrated. His numbers were insane, and a lot of it's about opportunity. He got the opportunity. We didn't see him coming. He did a great job. He was across the board a great contributor. Do I expect some regression? Yes, I do. That doesn't mean I don't see him as really high up in the rankings here. My number 5 might surprise you. It's Domantas Sabonis. This guy, he rebounds like crazy. He puts up huge numbers. And he is the son of Arvydas Sabonis.
I was going to say his dad was pretty good too.
He was good. But listen, Domantas Sabonis, he's smaller than his dad, but that also allows him to be a much more versatile player. I think he's great. You can win on guys like Domantas Sabonis that you can get in the mid rounds, or you could probably get Domantas Sabonis, I would probably say, for about 32 in an auction draft, something like that. That's a huge bargain. Now, here's a guy I'm really mixed on. Julius Randle. I have him at number 6. I didn't know where to place him because he proved me wrong last year. I had him as a bust. Obviously, he was not a bust last year. He was great. Do I think he's going to be that good again? I don't. I expect him to have some regression. I don't trust the Knicks a lot. But I think that Julius Randle has earned the respect that I can't put him any lower than 6 here. Number 7 is a guy that I love a lot. He has some injury risk to him, but Kristaps Porzingis, the unicorn, he can put up some big numbers. And listen, at the back end of these lists, sometimes I'm looking for the guys who can put up the big numbers because you're rolling the dice somewhere. And other times I'm going to pick a guy at number 8, Miles Turner. Miles Turner he's not great in a lot of ways, but he can win you a category. Sometimes and that's blocks, of course, when you can win a category with a single guy and you can get him for cheaper because of that, he can really be worth it. You build your team around a couple guys like that and a couple of all-stars, top of the line guys, and you got something. The back end guys, again, I was balancing this with small forward. Michael Porter Jr. is a little hard for me to figure. He's got huge amounts of talent. He performed great last year. I just don't totally know what to expect from him, so I gave him a little bit of a downgrade. There were guys like Porzingis that I feel like I'm a little higher on myself. We can argue about it. Number 10 is a guy who I think deserves a ton of respect, which is John Collins. People didn't really see him coming last year. He is such a valuable fantasy basketball player. I don't know why I keep saying fantasy sports. We're only playing basketball with John Collins. We're not going to play him in football leagues. You can play Alex Collins in your football league, but I wouldn't recommend that. John Collins, though, he's one of these guys that's underrated. He's the poor man's Domantas Sabonis in this list. And John Collins is going to put up some big numbers. Those are my top 10. Ross, I'm going to turn it over to you for sleepers.
Yeah, I mean, I love this kid that went to Kentucky. He plays in Charlotte, PJ Washington. I feel he's going to have a big year this year. He's going to be healthy. He showed so much progress last year. He got hurt. I like him a lot. I also like Paletti for San Antonio. I think he'll have a big year down there. It's hard. I don't like Spurs in fantasy at all. I try to stay away from them, but I feel there's a couple guys that I feel safe with. Murray, Paletti, both those guys I feel good about. And my other sleeper, I didn't know him on your list, but I love that Jeremy Grant for Detroit. I mean, I can't say better things about him. He's rebounding. He averages more than 20 points a game. He gets steals. He gets blocks. I mean, this guy does everything, and he plays in such a small market. No one cares about Detroit Pistons basketball except maybe a few people. But it's amazing how low he's going in these drafts. I mean, he's going 6th, 7th, 8th round. I mean, for me, he's like a 3rd, 4th rounder pick. But again, there's a lot of great small forward centers out there, and we mentioned a lot of the great ones like John Collins, and all those guys are exceptionally good to have on your team.
Okay, now I do want to follow up on a point that Ross is making there that I really think is important. You have to pay attention to the teams that aren't good in the NBA. They're still going to have great fantasy basketball players. I mean, Jeremy Grant was a real difference maker. Obviously not in the actual NBA in terms of how the Pistons did, but fantasy sports it's a totally different game. Follow the numbers. He's putting up big time numbers. I really like that call. Okay, we're going to move to centers, where of course
do you want me to talk about?
Oh,
I need Bus. I need this guys. I need to hear who he doesn't like.
I'm sorry, Kasey. I didn't.
Kasey Scheinfeld. Let's hear your Bus. Go.
All right. Well, I put. Although you have him listed in centers, I think I put Christian Wood on the list. This is somebody who we listed as a sleeper last year. Then he came out of the gates on fire and was putting up incredible numbers with Houston, but then he got hurt. And I think he missed like 2 straight months or something like that. And
he did.
He's somebody who's going to be probably more expensive than he was last year. I think I got him for like $6 or $7 in an auction draft, which was an incredible value. But he's going to be a lot that next year. And last year was the first year he ever got consistent playing time of heavy minutes. And look what happened. His body didn't really hold up. So I don't trust him enough to hold up. The one, although I think the biggest potential bust on the list is probably Julius Randle. I know, Dan, you were hesitant when you named him because we listed him as a bust last year or somebody we wouldn't trust last year. And this past year, he led the Knicks in scoring and rebounding and assists. And he had a breakout year, and they signed him to him. He got a massive, I think, 4-year extension. The problem was with those numbers, to me, they seemed like an outlier, and his percentages in the playoffs, by the way, because they made the playoffs last year, he shot 30% from the floor and 33% from deep in the playoffs against better competition. And that's why those percentages are going to hurt you if you're talking about a high volume player. He got a 28% usage rate in the Knicks offense last year, but that was because they were rocking, like, who was their backcourt? Like Alec Burks. I think we debated him on the waiver wire show, I think half the time, talking about how awful he was, or how you don't want to own him. And now this year they brought in Kemba Walker. They brought in Evan Fournier, these players who shoot better percentages and are going to demand the ball more and play more. So Julius Randle might not be the focal point of the offense in the way he was last year. And if he shoots poorly, which he has done historically, which is why we listed him as a risk last year, if he regresses back to the mean, all of a sudden all of his numbers go down, but he's being drafted like a top 3 or top 4 power forward. And that worries me. The last one, and Dan, I 100% agree. He belongs on the top 10 list. His talent is through the roof, is Zion Williamson. And the reason I'm listing that is because, to me, if you're going to pay for somebody who you think is elite, they got to contribute across the boards. His shooting percentage is awesome. His points are awesome. He rebounds 7 to 8 a game. I think it was 7.2 last year, which isn't incredible for a power forward, but it's certainly serviceable, certainly for somebody who puts up the numbers he does. He actually gets a good number of assists for a power forward in almost 4 a game. The problem is he doesn't block or steal very much at all. And at the power forward position, I want somebody who's going to contribute both on the defensive metrics as well. And he doesn't do that enough for me to merit the top 3 position where you'd have to pay or draft him.
Yep. And listen, I mean, if you're thinking of him that way, then, and this to me I was looking at small forward, it felt deeper to me than power forward.
Oh, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
Don't apologize. It's a sign of weakness. Don't apologize to this guy.
Oh, apologize for apologizing, will you? No, I think that I agree with your analysis of Zion Williamson. I'm betting on him taking a step forward, partly because I dissed him last year. He proved me wrong. I also like your point, Kasey, about understanding team context. You bring Kemba Walker into the Knicks, that's a very different Knicks setup. I love Kemba Walker, and by the way, I don't think we mentioned him, actually.
He kind of disappeared this year in fantasy. He's not being mentioned. He's not being drafted in
I love that guy.
Not even close. He's in the bottom rounds this year. I mean, no respect
that's a
at
steal
all.
then.
One guy who I think is a sleeper who's not getting a lot of love because he didn't play in many games last year is Jaren Jackson in Memphis.
Oh, yeah.
The guy he was a stud at Michigan State. He's going to be a stud in the NBA. In his role, in his 11 games that he played last year, in just 24 minutes a game, he averaged 22 points, 9 boards, 2.5 blocks, and 2.5 3-pointers per game.
Wow.
Like in a per minute, if that goes up to 30 minutes a game or 32 and he stays healthy, imagine what that was. Like, that's crazy.
Jaren Jackson, Dr. Dan Ratner is going to be drafting him.
Well, I actually did have him on my list as a sleeper that I did not mention here, but not because I was hiding it from you. It's just there's so many guys to comment on.
Right.
But look at Kasey bringing the stats.
I love it. Kasey Scheinfold.
See, I don't
Jaren Jackson.
I don't know as much fantasy basketball as you guys, so I really had to dive in.
You do. You play the cat and mouse game. We know what you're doing over there.
It's what I do. It's what I do in football, except
I sometimes
do actually.
I didn't know Ben Roethlisberger's 39 years old and he's in the twilight of his career.
All right, guys, let's turn to center. Now, there was no way I was going to touch a top 10 listed center after what happened with Hassan Whiteside. This is like this. It was like the story of our fantasy basketball season on MFSN was that I said Hassan Whiteside was a top 5 center. Obviously, not even close. So I'm going to turn it over to Ross here. Ross, you give me the top.
On my list, so my first center is Hassan Whiteside. He went to Utah. He looks unbelievable in Utah. I saw him in practice. He looks great. He's no, I'm just kidding, folks. It's not Hassan Whiteside, but he is playing for Utah this year. Maybe a change of place will make him. Maybe he'll be in the starting lineup. Who knows? Now this guy I'm going to mention. He's probably the number 1 pick in snake drafts. He does everything. Name a category, I'll tell you how great he is at it.
Yeah.
And you watch him play, he looks like the slowest guy in the world. I mean, he has no quickness at all. He makes I mean, everybody runs circles around, but it doesn't matter. It's Jokic. I mean, he is unbelievable. Enough said. I'm not going to say anything else. But if you have a chance to draft him. He's totally worth it. 3-pointers, shooting percentage, free throw, everything. There's not one category he's not great at. So I don't know what else to say. So number 2 is Anthony Towns. I love this kid. Last year, horrible year last year. His mom died of I believe, of coronavirus. It's a horrible year. He got coronavirus. He got hurt. He was coming off injury. I mean, just horrible. It was a rough one. Horrible stuff. It was like a Shakespeare play with him. It was horrible, Kasey Scheinfold. I felt bad for this kid because he's such a nice kid too, and he's young. But I'm taking Towns. He'll bounce back. He didn't have a bad year, but he didn't have a great year like he did the year before. But I'm taking him as my number 2. Number 3, Joel Embiid, complete stud. If he can stay healthy, he's unbelievable. He does everything: blocks, rebounds, shoots, everything. Rudy Gobert, probably the best defensive player in the league. I know he's French. I know you guys don't like French people, but I like Rudy Gobert.
Mon Dieu.
He averages like 2 blocks a game, which is unbelievable. I mean, this guy is good, and he's great field goal percentage too. If you can grab him, grab him. My next guy is Clint Capella. That's kind of high for Clint Capella. When he's playing and he's healthy, remember Case, he was getting like 20 rebounds a game at some time.
Oh, I know.
In the blocks and the rebounds and everything. I mean, this guy's a machine. I mean, Clint Capella, I remember he came out, he was not like in the original draft. He was like he came out and we had a bid for him, and somebody bid a crazy amount for him and they got him. But Clint Capella is the real deal, even though I don't like his hair. We'll talk about that later, but I love that kid. Bam, who plays for Miami. Kasey, how do you say his last name?
Adebayo.
Great player. And just like Jimmy Butler, I trust the system in Miami. I love their coach. And Bam, to me, is a great center. You can't go wrong as your starting center with Bam. Solid in all the other departments. Anton for Phoenix, University of Arizona graduate.
Ayton.
Well, not a graduate. DeAndre Ayton. Solid. Again, I don't love him, but I feel he'll have 18 points a game, probably 11 rebounds a game, maybe a block or 2 a game. He'll do the job for you. He's not like, I'm not jumping up and down about him, but he's a good center to have on your team. I want to say the name that Kasey didn't like, Christian Wood. I feel Christian Wood, when he's healthy and when he's
I like him if he stays healthy. I never said I didn't like the stats.
I mean, the center category to me is probably the weakest category of all 5. I mean, you got your top 5 guys, and then you got your bottom 5, and after that, it's like it's kind of like a drought. I mean, unless you count them as I don't know. I count more people as power forwards, I guess, like Anthony Davis and people like that. But Anthony Wood, and then my last guy. Well, I also like the guy for Chicago, Vucevic. I should have put him a little higher, but I just feel that he's not going to get. Yeah, Vucevic. I think he went to USC. I believe he'll have a good year. I'm just worried about him in that system in Chicago. They got ball now. They got a lot more shooters now. I don't know how much he'll be involved, but we'll see what happens. And my last guy is Jonas. He plays for New Orleans. Jonas
Valanciunas. I'll save you from that.
Thank you. So he's playing in New Orleans now. I think he'll have a good year down there. Honorable mention. I like Steve Adams too. I think he'll have a big year too. But he's my.
They swapped for one another, didn't they?
I know. I like Adams too. But again, center for me is like the weakest position out of all the NBA out of all the NBA positions right now.
It's certainly the most top heavy.
Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, let's say this too. It's also the position where there's the least eligible players. I mean, you've got shooting guards, small forwards everywhere. You got point guards, shooting guards. You've got small forward, power forward. You do not have a lot of players that are. You got power forward, center, but you don't have center mixing with anything.
No,
else.
it's tough. Shallow. It's very tough. I mean, I feel the guy from Chicago should be a little higher, but I'm worried about Chicago's system. I don't know what's going to happen with the Bulls this year. That's a team that's totally like a new team. They have so many new players.
I don't know what's going to happen either, and it's only because I can't predict the future. I apologize.
Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen in Chicago, but it should be interesting.
Kasey, bring us in with sleepers now.
All right. The first one I'm going to mention is he moved to Toronto after getting waived by the Orlando Magic last year. And now I think he's actually a sleeper, and that's Khem Birch. If you remember him, he was a back end guy, but he averages 14 points, 9 boards, a couple blocks a game when he's in there and playing some decent minutes. Boucher, is it Boucher? Boucher? How do you pronounce the center's name? Is it?
I think
French?
It's Boucher. I want to say. I think it's Boucher.
He's hurt for the start of the season, so Birch could get a lot of minutes. They didn't bring in another center after giving Birch the 3-year, $20 million contract, so they're committed to him, to giving him time. I think he can be somebody who can valuably help you on the back end with blocks and rebounds. He doesn't shoot bad percentages. He might not put up a tremendous amount of points early on, but we're talking about sleepers. We're not talking about the guys I'm expecting you to draft or buy and then play day in and day out. These are guys who are safe to have on your bench who can help you in a pinch. My other guy is Mo Bamba in Orlando. I love this guy. There was a period in when he played in May where he rebounded like 15, 15, and 18 in 3 straight games. And it shows you what he's capable of. There was a stretch where he was averaging over 3 blocks a game. Those numbers alone make him valuable. And that was in less than 20 minutes or 20 minutes per game. So if he can get more numbers, Wendell Carter Jr. is his only competition for minutes there. He's been hurt most of his career. Every year, it seems he gets hurt for a stretch of time. So I think Mo Bamba is primed for either being a breakout star this year, or he might never achieve what I'm hoping he achieves. So, and then the last one, I'm going to go with a rookie. I'm going to go with Dan's Cleveland Cavaliers, and that's Evan Mobley. You know, the kid, the freshman out of USC, a 7-footer. I know people are worried because Jared Allen is in Cleveland. What does that say? How many minutes he's going to get? Is it too crowded of a front court? Well, they wouldn't have spent a top 7 pick or whatever it was on Mobley they didn't top 3 pick. If they didn't plan on utilizing this guy, he's a great passer from the center position. So he's going to get you some assists. He blocks like crazy. What did he average? Over 3 blocks a game. I think
he was unbelievable. I saw him play many times. Yeah,
I think he has the ability to secure a big role right away. And if he does, especially with their outside shooters, we talked about Garland. They also have Sexton. I think he could be a really good floor spacer for them and get a lot of rebounds, blocks, and put up good percentages for you.
All right, I'm going to bring in with busts, and I have a variety of kinds of busts that you can have. I don't have anybody that's at the top that I see, and I'm like, no, stay away from them. But there are guys that have value on the back end. I'm not even saying they're not valuable, but a guy like Draymond Green, I don't think he's bringing enough value. Now, I have mixed feelings about this because if I can add him for $2 at the back end, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I'm not saying he's a bad player to own. I just think that his name value is going to make him a little bit overvalued. When you look at what he's actually doing, he's not actually that good in anything but steals. Actually, his assists are pretty high considering his position, but he's not going to hurt you. It's fine. I don't see him doing that well, and I could see him kind of losing interest if Golden State isn't really coming along. Isaiah Stewart is a guy who put up really good numbers, but I could just see somebody, a team like Detroit, maybe he could just disappear altogether. You don't know what's going to happen on teams like that, so I think you want to look out for that. Yusuf Nurkic is another guy that I'm fading because he can't stay healthy, and he doesn't put up that great numbers.
As a Nurkic owner last year, I can assure you it's very frustrating to own.
He tried to trade me for him too, I remember.
Well, you even named your team Nurk Alert, and
I know
that means that you deserve that empathy, man. You really took that hard. Last one I'll say.
And there was a Nurk Alert. He's gonna destroy your team.
Now, Ross, you might not like this because you like this guy, but and I also I don't know if we have his name pronounced right. You call him Jacob Poletti, but I call him Poiltle? I don't know.
I think it's Pirtle. I think there's actually an R in there.
It was Poletti.
It spells like it's pronounced Pirtle. I think.
Obviously, we're just deciding.
Well, San Antonio center. We know who we're
I don't like him because I don't know where he'll be in the rotation, and his free throws are terrible. So if you're going to get a specialist who blocks shots, I'd rather have a guy like Mo Bamba. And Mo Bamba's free throws are not that good either, but I like his positioning in the rotation.
I like the name too.
By the way, that shows how deep point guard is. But if San Antonio, isn't it DeJounte Murray? Was a stud last year in San Antonio. We didn't talk about him in the top 10 or in the sleepers.
Nothing.
And that guy is awesome.
Yeah,
he's in the top 5 rounds. You're 100% right.
Oh, we got a comment here. We've got somebody saying, "Hi, fellas. Good to see you, ads. Let us know if you have thoughts, guys. We're running out of time, so this is your last chance to get some thoughts in." Guys, what's the status on Klay Thompson? Because we didn't mention
Klay Thompson's coming back supposedly during Christmas.
They're saying around Christmas time.
Around Christmas time. Maybe he'll be playing on Christmas Day.
You draft for cheap. You
draft and stash.
You draft and stash him. Kawhi Leonard, the guy from Toronto we talked about.
Siakam. Yep.
Yeah, I mean those guys. You draft and stash. You don't take them too early though. I mean, Clay, I love Clay Thompson. I hope I can get him, but it's just I don't want to spend too much for him, obviously, because he's missing more than half the season.
Yep. And I,
Well,
as
about half the
a
season.
Cavs fan, I don't even know if I can tolerate him being on my team, but I'll do it to win a championship.
But yeah, he and Kawhi Leonard too. I mean, you got to check the status before you draft guys. That they say if when you draft them, and you see like an IR or out and stuff, just make sure you press the button and check their status, because that can make or break your season too. Because some of these injuries are minor, some of them are major, but there's only one way to find out: is you got to do your research.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap up here. I hope we prepared you well for your drafts. They're coming up soon because the season's coming up soon. Think about the things we said, but in the end, pick the players you like. You want to like your team. Go ahead and grab them. We will be back throughout the season. We're going to have a waiver wire each week. We'll keep you updated on what to do. Keep in touch with us. Put your comments below. And thank you guys for watching. And thank you for being here with me, Ross and Kasey. Oh, wait, we do have a question. I'm going to squeeze this one in. Thoughts on Anthony Edwards? Will he have a big jump, or will he be hindered by a healthy Russell and Beasley? Okay, so we kind of covered this before, but Ads, you're joining us late. We're gonna get your answer in here. We had mixed things about Anthony Edwards. I would say we could probably sum it up that we think he has enormous upside, but he's kind of a boomer bust kind of player. Kasey, you started off talking.
Well, I'm a huge Edwards fan. I think what he did the last couple months of the season show what his potential is. He's more of a scorer than the other than some of the other peripheral categories, but I think the potential is there for a score and rebound. He shoots good percentages. He's going to get to the line a fair amount because he's a bit of a slasher. I am worried. I do really like Beasley. I think he's kind of one of the underrated point guard, shooting guard types of players this year, and that could cut into Edwards' numbers some, but most of these offenses can support 2 or 3 elite scorers in today's NBA. I'm not, and I think Dan and Ross would probably agree, we're not big Russell fans, so we're not worried about him taking minutes away from Edwards, because I think he's going to be so inefficient that he won't be in the rotation as much as Edwards and Beasley by the end of the year. But certainly having a volume guy like Russell does run the risk for Edwards to not reach the potential I think he's capable of.
Yeah, I think actually playing beside Beasley helps him, because when you're playing,
he'll average 35 minutes a game, over 20 points a game. He'll have 6 or 7 assists, give or take, and he won't hurt you in free throw percentage or field goal percentage. It's a good draft. I wouldn't draft him in the first 2 rounds, so I would wait till either the 4th or 5th round. That's me. But I think it's a good pick this year. And as you know, Malik Beasley, as long as he doesn't walk around with a gun, I think he'll have a good year too.
Or start dating former NBA players' wives or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Ross's point is a good one in terms of you want to get these players at the right place.
Yeah.
If Anthony Edwards falls into that kind of 4th round status, I mean, you grab him.
Wasn't he the guy that said he can beat you in any sport? Like he's a great golfer, ping pong, tennis, any sport you could name, he can beat you in. I think he said that in an interview one time. And,
absolutely, guys.
I think people I took him up on it too, and I think he did really well.
I want to break in because Ads is thanking us for our insights. Thank you for being here with us. He asked, "Are you guys doing a draft or a mock draft on YouTube?" Yes, we are. Okay, next week we are drafting for our actual league. So you can use that as the mock draft for your league. It's an auction draft. So if you're doing a snake draft, you're going to have to modify how you're thinking about it for that. But definitely tune in. Next week, it's Thursday. That's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So check it out. And we can't wait to spend some more
there's
time
a lot,
with
guys. There's a lot of drinking. There's a lot of womanizing going on. It's a crazy time of a draft, but we all have a great time. And a lot of smack talking, but it's all worth it. You guys will have a great time watching this.
There is a lot of smack talk, but womanizing. No, I don't know what you're talking about here. Let's clarify that right away.
Okay, right, fine. I was just kidding on the womanizing.
Hey, listen, Ross,
sorry.
you add the color, even though you're extremely white like the rest of us. But guys, this is great spending time with you. Looking forward to competing. We'll have the draft next week, and we'll keep the waiver wire coming. You're going to get insights into, who can help your team. Last year, there was a guy who claimed that I helped him win his league with the things that I said. I'll do it again. You guys bring your comments to me. All 3 of us will give you the information you need. Thank you for watching, guys. We will see you next week for the mock draft, and we will keep it coming. Thank you for watching.